Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I'm introducing you as a friend first, but in their style.
I think maybe there's a communication breakdown here because you want to like doll me up, but then you're like, but just as a friend.
I just want to introduce you, first of all, that you are here. From past 2 years, you are like absence. We just have to like give time to them. Then I tell them.
So his strategy is to dress her up in traditional clothing, sounds like, and then introduce her as a friend. And then, and for Jen, she's like, well, but they're going to know or something. And it's hard to know. But I wonder if for some Indian kids, adult kids, that is a strategy of just like, look, I want to ease them into it. I don't want to just blast them with, I'm engaged or I got married. I want to ease them into it. And every step of the way, there's going to be resistance. But if I just sort of eke out the resistance over time, then it'll be easier to handle and my parents will eventually adjust to it. So I'll introduce you. And if you're in traditional clothing, it'll look better. And they'll wonder, but I'll refuse. I'll be, no. And then they'll continue to try to get me to marry someone else, and I'll play that phase. And then the next phase will be they'll see more of you. I think Summit seemingly did a very similar thing like this. I wonder if it's kind of understood, and maybe even parents kind of will go along with it to some extent. They're just like, well, say 6 months down the line after they do the strategy, the parents are like, well, we don't want him to marry this woman, but she has come around and she is a nice person and we do like her and she has shown respect by being nice and also by dressing in traditional clothes. So it's not great, but rather than, so I don't know, maybe there's some kind of strategy there, but it just seems weird to introduce her as a friend and then later on be like, surprise, this is my, rather than just going to the parents and be like, so I got to tell you something and I'm going to introduce you. So I don't know. Or it's just a furtherance of the shadiness that I think Rishi is exhibiting.
How bad could it be if you introduced me as your fiance? I mean, we've been engaged for like 2 years.
Maybe they can don't let me out from the house. Or they can push me like, yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Did you just say they're not going to let you out of the house?
Yeah, normally I'd be like, huh? But after watching Summit, I think, yeah. One, I think it could be totally possible that the parents would do everything in their emotional, they wouldn't have physical, so in this scenario, the parents don't have physical control over Rishi. Rishi's a big guy. He can overpower his parents, I'm guessing, unless his dad's like a giant or something. I'm guessing that Rishi would be like, you can't imprison me in the house, and you get out of the house. But I think in this scenario, the parents would use so many emotional tactics, and Rishi would be in line with that he is family oriented, I think, as a lot of Indian people are, and would just not want to disappoint his parents. So would his parents say, don't leave the house, he would comply. And so they wouldn't physically restrain him, but emotionally they would restrain him. And Rishi is worried about that. There's another possibility, which I wouldn't have thought about before, that Summit alerted us to. He talked about, I don't know the accuracy of this, but Summit was worried that, what was it again? It was, getting divorced. I think it was during that phase when Summit was desperately asking his parents to let him divorce. He was also asking the parents of his wife to let him divorce. And there was all the dad, Summit's dad was kind of on board with the divorce, trying to broker a deal or something. And Summit had to pay 30 grand US to, not in US, but comparatively US dollars to this other family as a way of buying them off. And if they were displeased, the wife's parents, Summit said something like, they could get me arrested. They could make a false report and I could end up going to jail. And I just thought, whoa, because that whole storyline of Summit was eye-opening to me. You hear about things, and I don't know much of anything about Indian culture, and I still don't, but I just figured it was more like, because on the high end of traditional American families, I have an idea of what that looks like. I have Korean friends, for example. If you're a Korean, you have Korean immigrant parents, you know what I'm talking about. It's a different sort of traditional, but it can be a lot. But so I'd seen stuff like that, but nothing like this, where you would have a whole community and you would have this agreeing among people of just like, well, yeah, I mean, he deserves it. He wants a divorce. So yeah, he deserves to go to prison for 5 years. Everyone understands that. I don't know the accuracy of that, but that was the way Summit talked about it. So there's a chance that for Rishi, he'd be like, no, my parents could literally call the police, make a false allegation, and the police would chain me to the bed. I'm guessing it's not something like that. But, well, along these lines, Korean client of mine, actually, there was a kid in this family who was, 17 or so, and he was a little rebellious. He wasn't doing great in school, and he was kind of talking back to the parents, and I can't remember all the details, but he wasn't terribly defiant, but on the scale of a Korean kid, he was, with Korean parents that were born in Korea, he was pretty rebellious. And so the parents asked the whole family and community to beat their son. And that's what happened. And by the way, CPS, but the parents got the uncle and the cousins and friends of the family, men, to invite him over to a garage. Say, like, come over to this garage, we're doing stuff. And he saunters into the garage, they close the garage door, and then 15 guys proceed to beat him. That's a community, right? That's everyone signing off on this notion that this is okay. And, in my book, he didn't do anything to deserve that. And according to U.S. law, he also didn't do anything to deserve that. So there's all that mess. But there's different ideas about this sort of thing. And there's a lot of different ideas about this sort of thing. So I don't know what Rishi means by that. Maybe he'll explain what he means by my parents wouldn't let me leave.
Yeah. Are they going to hold you down? This sounds absurd to me.
I started out already being annoyed with Rishi about the clothes, him contradicting himself, not really making sense about what was appropriate, what he wanted me to wear. And then I realized what I'm really upset and angry about is the fact that we're still having to lie about what our relationship is.
Totally. But did you Google it? Did you watch 90 Day Fiancé? You would think that the relationship between Summit and Jenny would be, if the relationship 101, Rishi 101 would be to watch at least a few or a summary. There's probably a YouTube summary of their relationship. So, yeah, it's surprising if you're an American that doesn't have a reason to research it, but you're an American that has a reason to research it. You've had 2 years to look into it, because it doesn't sound surprising to me at all. What Rishi is saying, I'm just like, yeah, that sounds about right. And I'm not involved with someone from India. So how come I know? Well, I know because I've been watching Jenny and Summit so closely. But yeah, I just don't understand why they don't do their homework. And I wonder if 90 Day Fiancé literally vets people. They ask a question. So how much do you know about the culture of this person from the other country? And if the American is just like, oh yeah, well, I've been looking into it. I've read some books, and, and then the producers just hang up on them. Be like, well, you're no fun. And then they select the people that are like this, where it's like, huh? I had no idea.
I was cool with it. I tried to be cool with it. But at this point, it really bothers me.
You're telling me your family is going to keep you under house arrest?
Yeah, maybe.
How are they going to do that? Explain to me.
Maybe they will push me into a different direction, they will try to force me to go for the arranged marriage or something like that.
Yeah, so he's using the word force, and she's thinking physically force or legally force. How's that possible? But people from other cultures, they're much more mindful of acceptance and love and the traditions and the directives of their superiors throughout their life. In the United States, that's not generally the mainstream point of view. Once you're 18, for a lot of people, it's just like, you're done taking orders. And if your parents tell you to do something, you're just like, well, it's not, I'll take that into consideration, but, moving on in life. Not every mainstream American, but many. That would be an important thing to talk about. But I think both of them exist within that culture of what he means by force and what she means by force. And they don't understand that the other person has a completely different understanding of what that word means.
They will try to force me to go for the arranged marriage or something like that. Or they will
that.
I know, and then
Go for it. I'm kind of beyond caring right now.
What? Okay, so I think now we're seeing what she was referring to earlier, which is the overreactivity and being upset about things that don't make any sense. He's telling her what the reality is, the landscape of just like, I think my parents, if we move too fast, they would freak out and they would emotionally force me. And given he doesn't know to say this, but in my culture and the way that I am, and I don't think I'm ever going to be able to change this. I really do want my parents' approval. I don't think you understand as an American person how I know you want your parents' approval, but that pales in comparison how much I want my parents' approval. If my parents in the end say that I can't marry you, I won't do it, even though I love you. That's just how I am. It doesn't mean I don't love you. It just means that I value family more. And I know that sucks for you, but that is the way that it is. And that's why I'm trying to strategize this so I can get them on board, so I can have everything. I can have my family and you, and everyone will get along. But he doesn't know to say that or something. But then he says, they're going to force me. And then she's like, well, what are they going to force you to do? And he's like, well, okay, if you ask, they'd probably force me to marry someone. He's just answering the question. And then she gets triggered. Fine, you go do that. Huh? What are you talking about? I'm talking about my parents forcing me. I don't want to marry someone else. Why are you getting triggered? But, because the idea comes up. So I don't know. But given her very quick reaction, has sort of shades of Jasmine, if you will, where that image comes into her mind of like, it's like just sort of an image, a story that quickly kind of rolls through her head of just like, okay, so if we don't play it right, he gets forced and he has to go along with it because I don't know, I understand that, but then he has an arranged marriage and then he's married and then I lose him and he rejects me and boom, that's when, all that happens, that narrative happens in half a second and then that terror, that trauma triggering happens and then it's defensiveness. I need to defend myself. I'm being harmed. I might even feel like I'm being abused in this moment, depending on my history. And so I'm going to come out swinging.
Marriage or something like that. Or they will
that.
I know, and then
Go for it. I'm kind of beyond caring right now.
Why don't you understand this? I can't be a bad guy. I don't want to.
Really? Because you kind of seem like an ass right now.
Wow. Calling people names, that's constructive. Being sarcastic, that's constructive. Yeah, not okay. Just speak from your heart. Be like, okay, I'm feeling really scared right now that's going to happen. Or I'm in a bit of a shock of what the landscape is here. Or I need some reassurance that you're never going to do that. You're never going to marry anyone else, right? Like even if your parents force you, you're not going to do it, right? Because that's really threatening to me. Ask for reassurance. There's a lot of other options other than calling him an asshole.
You are not getting me. I have many responsibility for my family because there is no key person in my family except me. I'm just want a good way. I just want a good way that where we can both.
I don't want to meet your family anymore.
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, all right. I doubt she'll stick to that, or at least I don't think she would. But yeah, again, from an American standpoint, I might agree with that. If I, for example, for this weird world, when I met my wife, if she told me that there was almost no way that her parents would approve of me, I'd just be like, well, I don't know, screw them. I guess I'll never see them. If you want to have Father's Day with your family, I just won't go. That would be very strange. It would be a pretty big move, and it would take a lot for that to happen, but that's an option. I think there are some of you who might even live a life like that. There are some people who will cut themselves off from their own parents because it's healthy to do so. Then they'll get judged and stigmatized, like, you can never reject your parents. I'm just like, well, it's easy for you to say you didn't have parents like these parents, Not my parents, of course, but, other people's. Point is that I think for her, it's easy to say, well, I might agree with her that if you have people being that prejudicial, and I've said that about Jenny and Summit, it's just like, from my cultural point, Summit should have cut himself off from his mom so long ago. But that's just how I see the world. It's not how the majority of people in the world see the world. And that's fine. It's just a different set of priorities, different set of things you focus on. And so for her, she's just like, well, I'm just never going to meet him, so screw that. We're getting married, right? It's like she doesn't understand that for her to say, I'm never meeting the parents, then for him, he's like, oh, well, then this is over. I don't think you understand how I work. I don't think you understand how typical Indian people work, because if you don't want to meet my parents, then this isn't going to happen. So this could be tantamount for him in this moment of a huge shock to him, and maybe even feeling of rejection, maybe even a feeling of just like, really? Like you don't want to put effort into it? I don't know. Let's see what happens.
Honestly, at this point, I have a visa until X date. I'll be here until then. You let me know when you want to be honest with your family about us.
But very soon.
Bye.
It's not a very nice way to treat someone, but the ultimatum, I think, is fine. It is a good litmus test. If you, as an American, Jen, are wanting a certain life, which is fine given your cultural perspective, a good way to find out now is, look, you either tell your parents that we're getting married tomorrow and rip the Band-Aid off and deal with the consequences and marry me, or we're done. Because honestly, if she had watched the Jenny and Summit story, I could imagine actually maybe she did watch it and she's just like, well, because what Jenny should have done in the beginning is just like, look, pal, either this happens tomorrow or we're done. And because, with Jenny, all the suffering that she went through, and then eventually, she did that several times, but then eventually she did it enough times that Summit eventually had to deal with it. I think Summit genuinely wanted to be with Jenny, but for Summit, I think he was trying to have his cake and eat it too. He's trying to not completely put at risk his relationship with his parents and still be with Jenny, live with Jenny and be with Jenny and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I could see someone logically saying, I'm not going to go through 10 years like what she did. So I'm just going to tell him, look, you either make it happen now or we're done. And, I think you could see that being wise. I can't imagine that working. But I want to be clear, there's a nicer, more constructive way to say it. She could have just said, okay, look, caveat, caveat, caveat. Maybe I'm wrong, but I need you to tell your parents, and if you don't, then I don't think this is going to work, because I don't want to live in limbo. And I'm sorry, but it's just kind of how it is. And maybe I can be convinced otherwise, but I don't think so. So proof's in the pudding. I got one life to live. I've got limited years left on the planet, and I'm not going to live, I don't know how much. You tell me the story, it feels like we're going to be in this limbo. I've watched Jenny and Summit. We could be in this limbo for 10 years. No, I'm not going to do that. I got better things to do. So I'm sorry I'm putting you in this position. I know this must be really, really hard, but you fell in love with an American. And in the same way that I didn't know exactly what I was signing up for, you didn't know what you were signing up for, well, now you know. So I'm sorry, and it'll be tough, but I'm pretty sure this is a deal breaker. You either tell them, and we get married in a few months, and maybe your parents hate you, maybe they don't, I don't know. But I don't understand that, but it's just the way it's got to be. I'm not going to live in limbo for the rest of my life. I'm sorry, I love you. I hope you make the choice that I want you to make, but I don't want to force you. I'm not forcing you. I'm just telling you where my limit is. She could have said that, but instead she says, you're an asshole, da-dee-dee, and then walk off.
When I first met Rishi, he told me that he told his family years ago that he didn't want an arranged marriage, and they had accepted it. So when Rishi tells me his family might pressure him into an arranged marriage, I'm thinking that either he's lying then or he's lying now.
He was lying then. Why would he lie now? Why would he actually tell his parents and they would accept, and then now he would reverse that and say like, well, actually, I never, unless he's trying to get out of the relationship or something. Anyway, so yeah, he was lying then, just like Summit was lying then. And add that to the list of shadiness from Rishi, and yeah, okay, well that makes it different, because did she just find this out? Because if she just found this out, then that would be quite a revelation and would justify anger. Not calling someone names, but storming off would be more justified. The amount of upsetness that you could feel in most say, wait, so you've been lying to me this whole time? But I don't know. She didn't really highlight that. So it makes me feel like she already knew that was not true or something. I don't know. What do you think?
I'll talk to you tomorrow. Honestly, I don't want to talk anymore about this tonight. It's very confusing to me. Like, one minute you're like, oh, I control what happens. And then the next you're like, oh, but they have to like you. And
so I'll highlight, it's a bit concerning. I've already commented that it's not constructive to call people names and storm off. You could certainly talk about your feelings. I've also talked about how it's a little odd that this is a surprise to her. Although if he did lie to her, then it would make sense it would be. I don't know, but we might be seeing a pattern, and we often are, but we'll keep an eye on it, where she tries to get her way through amplified emotion, name-calling, walking away, and not by rejecting. Essentially, that's what you're doing. It's just like, I'm done with you. I reject you. You're a horrible person. And then you walk away. Because in that moment, you're essentially being broken up with, kind of, right? It's like, oh my God, did you just break up with me because I told you that my parents have traditional values in India, of which most Indian parents do? Maybe not in that way, but a lot of them. So you're breaking up with me? Like I'm that dispensable? And it pushes the Rishis of the world and just like, oh my God, no. And that's not a good pattern. If you've ever been a victim of that pattern, it doesn't feel good. Like at the drop of a hat, your partner is just going to break up with you, divorce you, leave you, and you're just like, what? How's this happening? And the way it ends up looking is the way that it looks right now, where it's just like she's the victim and then he's the one consoling her. But what about what she did to him? What about the way she treated him? She name called. Now, again, if he's been lying and he just revealed that right now, then it kind of throws that all off, of course. But I don't know, it didn't look that way. I have a feeling like she already knew that was a lie that he had said earlier. Doesn't make it okay that he lied, but yeah.
I'm at the point where, like, I don't really care if they like me.
It's not like that. I just want the things comfortable for everyone. But
I just left my family.
So often, I want to just stop them and help them say things because that's my business. I literally, that's my job. It's my occupation, is to help people say things that are more accurate, more precise, more elaborate. And I want to tell her more, because he's like, I just want to make them comfortable. Okay, what? But I don't know, but maybe he doesn't even have this. I wouldn't be surprised if he's anything like Summit. He's only thinking like one move ahead. He's not thinking the full length. He's just like, I want to be with you, and I don't want to piss off my parents. So end of story. That's what Summit did all the time. Just complete avoidance of the bigger picture. I don't know if that's true about Rishi, but at least there's some signs there. Or if he actually does have kind of a campaign involved, he's like, okay, look, I get it. But I have 5 phases that I've worked out in my head. The first phase is introduce you as a friend. The second phase is introduce you as a really good friend. The third phase is that I'll tell my sister and get her on board with it, so that when I go to stage 4 and I tell my dad and get him on board, I say, well, I got sister on board. Everyone likes Jen, right? And then stage 5 is we finally tell mom, and I've got it all worked out. So you got to trust me on that. If he had something like that, that might reassure her. I'm guessing it would, honestly. But the way that he talks, he's just like, look, I just need you to act like you're not my spouse for some indefinite amount of time. I need you, and I'm going to continue lying to my parents that you're just a friend for some indefinite amount of time. And I just need you to do that. Like, that would be very disheartening, right? It'd be very uncertain. You'd be like, so, well, what's the timeline here? There's a chance that in his head, he has a timeline of 3 days. I don't know. Or he doesn't have a timeline like the way Summit did. Or he has a timeline of 5 years. Just tell her.
Family, and was like, you know what, y'all? I'm moving to India.
I know that that's
They're
why.
not super happy either.
I know. I have a family too, so I understand. Let me do the things one time. If it's not work, I'll go with your way. Definitely.
Okay, that's good. I mean, if that's true, that'll be reassuring to Jen. I would elaborate on that, or if I were her, I'd be like, tell me more. What do you mean by that? But it sounds like he's saying, let me do it my way to try to get them on board. But if they don't come aboard, I'm with you. Did Summit ever say that to Jenny? Well, what does be with you mean? Having watched Summit and Jenny, it's like you got to be specific. Does that mean we live in a secret apartment across town and you never talk about me? And you get married to someone else because your parent, like, what does you're going with me mean exactly? Define that.
I need to think about it. Can you just hail me a car?
Why?
Please, just, you have to.
I was worse in my communication, but to say my mom directly that we are a couple and we are engaged and she is my fiance, they will be like not happy with that.
I always wonder about the people like this that come on the show. Do they not understand this is being filmed and it'll be, I mean, I suppose sometimes they film it months prior, but still, eventually it's going to come out, right? So would that harm? And then I think maybe they'll never hear about it, but that just seems absurd, right? Just imagine that you were on the show and no one told you, by the way, did you know your son, or there's a tweet that, I don't know, it's hard to believe, but I always just wonder, like, what are they thinking? Maybe it's even, well, I guess Summit did that, right? Because Summit was married while he was on the show, right? The wife never was informed that Summit was still with Jenny? How does that work? Is it possible that they wouldn't know this show happened? I mean, it's not it's not necessarily being shown in every country, right? I mean, it's available in every country, but it's not being universally watched. But I don't know, it just makes me wonder about why. So the speculation I have is maybe they go on the show subconsciously or consciously as a way of pushing themselves because they don't want to live in limbo themselves. The Rishis and the Summits are just like, I want the show to kind of force me to push this forward or something. I don't know.
It will ruin everything.
I'm just tired of the excuses. I'm kind of worried that I have uprooted my life, and I'm now wondering if I've sacrificed too much to be with him.
Okay, well, let's adjourn there. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. And take care of other people. Let's all take care of each other because we all deserve it. We really, really do.